We often talk about the benefits of working with open source software and how it is beneficial for everyone, from new to experienced developers, startups, or big companies, across project sizes and domains. And we all agree that it helps us all to collaborate and learn from each other. Also, it is everywhere, and it is almost impossible to escape using it. You might already be using open source code, whether you are aware of it or not. But there are no free lunches. What about the security of open source software? How do you secure code that can be seen, modified, and distributed by anyone? What are the challenges and how do you address them? What are the do's and the don'ts? I don't have the answer to these questions, but our speaker certainly does. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in for another IntelliJ ID live stream. I'm your host, Mala Gupta. And now let me add our speaker to the stream. Where are you, Cesar? Yes. Hi, Cesar. It's a pleasure to have you present with us today. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you much for the invitation. It's a great honor for me to be here in these live streams. I have been following the live streams since a couple of years, so really good job all the team is doing at JetBrains and all the logistic going on. So thank you for being here, and thank you for the ones that are watching the streaming or the recording too.
Thank you so much. Now, let me quickly introduce Cesar. He is a senior software engineer with Tommy Tribe, a fellow Java champion. He contributes to many open source projects. He's microprofile contributor, Jakarta and Apache Tommy EE contributor, JCP associate member, teacher, and international speaker. And if you are at a conference and you see the null pointers Java community band playing, you're most likely to see Caesar playing on the drums. So, Caesar, how did that happen? How were you always interested in playing drums, or?
Yeah. Music has been part of my life, and when I joined the Null Pointers Java community one was a couple Java ones ago, and Freddie, S. Burns, and Frank, and all the great guys there invited me, and it was really fun, and giving not just the technical side of the community, but also have this other parallel community band. It's also great. It's part of the ecosystem that we work and live, right?
That's amazing. And you were missed at Java One this year, especially
Yeah,
the
I
null
couldn't
pointers.
attend, but I saw your
Yeah.
keynote. Congratulations, by the way,
Thank you
to
so
you and
much.
all the ones who present, to all the attendees. I'm looking forward to be there next year. Thank you.
Great. And before I let the amazing Caesar take the stage, let me share some quick housekeeping details for you. Everyone who's watching, if you have any questions, please use the YouTube chat to post your question. Caesar will take breaks between the session to answer your questions. So you don't really have to wait towards the end of the session to just type in your questions. And the session is being recorded and will be hosted on IntelliJ Ideas YouTube channel and also JetBrains Twitch channel. So if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, now is the time to do so. And the last point, if you like today's session, which I'm sure you will, please like the video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any amazing similar content and amazing speakers like Caesar. Now, Caesar, let me add your screen. Yes, screen to the stream. That's a tongue twister. And I'll drop off. I'll be backstage. If you have any questions, just give me a shout and have fun.
Thank you, Mala. Okay, so let's dive into Java ecosystem security with DevOps and open source. There are a lot of terms in that title. So hopefully in the next 45 minutes we're gonna have the chance to cover the message that I want to give to you. Mala did a awesome introduction, so I'm gonna just move ahead. But you can follow me or message about questions now during the live streaming, or if you're seeing the recording, feel free to drop any questions via Twitter. So when we talk about Java, open source, how the security and is related with software supply chain, DevOps, DevSecOps, which is another term that you have been hearing in the last couple of years. This session, we are not going to jump straight to show me the code, because that is just the tip of the iceberg. So instead, I want to give you first the context of where we're coming from, if this is the first time you're hearing some of these terms. Or if you are a seasoned developer, still, I'm going to give you information about what's going on yesterday, because the real world examples that I call them throughout the session are based on work that I have been doing the last 2 weeks, related with CVE patching and also all these interaction with these terms. So obviously, when we talk about why the software fails, I really like from time to time going and see what the investigations are doing, what the analysis, what the papers are doing. And there was a paper back in, this is an old paper, this is 2005 from the E magazine, in which Robert Charter provides various examples how huge software failures over the years with 14 companies and governments across the world had been impacted. And why I start with this, because one of the questions that I get when I'm talking about open source security is if the security concerns that they have is because a developer made a mistake or it was a configuration. So we need to understand first a little bit about the context, right? And back then, and this is pre DevOps, I will call it, when we tried to see why the software was failing, why the perception from the stakeholders was that the software was not functioning as usual, or was not secure as usual, like nowadays you have been hearing a lot about, is because, he in the paper, this doctor provides information that he says, okay, it's because lack of project goals, bad estimation, requirements, security is a non-functional requirement. There were debates about this, right? Where to include security? Is that it was something leveraged for the operational side of the fence. And maybe, even though we are in 2022, your team in your company, your organization is working in this way, right? And that's the purpose of the session, of creating this session, is to provide you with information, tools, and real world experience that may help you to take better decisions. Project management, status, risk communications, inability to handle the project's complexity too, sloppy development practice, and all the ones that you are seeing here, stakeholder politics, all these kind of variables play a key role. And still nowadays, when I talk to people, when we go and do these kind of presentations, we hear a lot of this. And this is from 2005. So how many years has passed, and we are still trying to overcome these challenges. At the same time, we are receiving feedback about the new wave of cloud native 12-factor architectures and so on, service mesh. And we are like developers, like architects, or like operational, or like DevOps, or like SRE engineers, trying to catch up, trying to bring all the good stuff from the latest and greatest, but at the same time, we are still struggling with some of this stuff, right? But if we move forward a little bit in the history, trust me, there are just 3 slides about history, then we jump into the subject more in a update way. But the Agile Manifesto came 2001. This is important because for all of those that are wondering what is the difference between DevOps, what is DevSecOps, and why all this has been evolving, notice that the previous system status was still present 5 years after the Agile Manifesto. So project management book of knowledge has existed since the 80s. There had been many ways about how to address these concerns for making our software, our solutions better and without errors, without security flaws, and so on. So then move forward a little bit, the time needle. DevOps came to the rescue, right? 2009, 10 deployments per day, Dev and Ops cooperation with Flickr, and all these all this is the starting point according to the historian books of software development. And 2009, in 2009 was the first conference named DevOps Days, and still, this term it has been increasing adoption over the past years. I'm gonna share some stats. And if this is the first time you're seeing about DevOps and why I think this is important, is because it is a set of practice that combines the software development and the IT operation into one big happy family. And stop hearing this common quotes that put it working on my machine, it's not my code, it's your machine. The DBA maybe send you an email yesterday in the middle of the night that they were still having trouble with the latest release, but you as a developer weren't present in that call, or the other way around. So DevOps is a set of practices. It's not a methodology that you need to accomplish by levels and so on. But some people say it's a unicorn to shorten the system development life cycles and provide continuous delivery and high software quality, right? This is an interesting topic. It has been a really interesting topic, but the truth is that nowadays, even in the industry, when you're looking for job opportunities, you hear about these terms, right? Also, it's worth to mention that DevOps is complementary with agile software development. And all this is summing up. And then we have also DevSecOps, we are going to see today. So at the end, several DevOps aspects came from the agile way of working and lean manufacturing. And there are many books and many incredible sessions about this topic over the past years. And still, the latest status of DevOps report was published by Google this year. So it's still a hot topic in trend. But at the end, like any new approach to how to work, it's a combination of specific practices, culture change, and also tool sets. And that's why you are here in this session, right? So when we saw the trend of what is DevOps, the question in Google Trends, you see that the top pick is February 2022. And why is this happening, right? Why? Even after more than 8 years, we are still talking about it. Well, Patrick DuBois, I really like this blog post that he wrote when he mentioned the shade of DevOps roles. And you are I'm pretty sure that 99% of you are gonna be identified with these terms and how they are related to DevOps, and how much are more terms that are more focused on the development side of the fence and more on the operation side of the fence. But this is a really great slide that I wanted to share, because at the end, DevOps has a span across the industry, right? Some roles that you may have been here about DevOps recruiters, SRE, system reliability engineers. So this is an evolving topic, right? And why I say this is an evolving topic? Well, in the last couple of years, you have heard about the DevSecOps. And I took this quote from Steve Terrana from Continuous Delivery Foundation Ambassador. It's an article, and he started with "No one's agree on what it actually means." Right. My purpose of this session is not to say this is the correct definition, but to present the variables for you and adopted even as DevSecOps or just as DevOps. But at the end, the takeaway from how this is evolving is that this is a moving target, if you want to see it like that, or it's an evolving subject of matter. Interesting enough, when we compared, let me increase it a little bit here, the font. When we compared how the popularity is DevOps in comparison with DevSecOps, we see a clear trend here, right? So, and this is the beginning of this year. So when we compared Dev with DevSecOps, there is still the need to spread the word and say, okay, if you don't like to change all your manual in your organization and replace the word DevOps with DevSecOps, it doesn't matter. What the takeaway here is, what are the new practices? What are the new need for actually having a new name for that? here. So the sec in DevOps, why, right? Well, it has a couple of key principles that you're seeing on the screen: inventory, and also monitoring your system, your application, your infrastructure, the entire supply chain of software. Having this self-servicing. Hey, Cesar, but I had been implementing continuous integration since 10 years ago. Well, okay. I have been trying to implement, automate more and more. Why there is the need of DevSecOps, right? So if we go back to, I call it a wake-up calls, as we're going to see it in the slides. There have been many, mainly in the Java ecosystem, there have been a couple of wake-up calls that now are drawing more attention and more from developers to start worrying about the security. And it's not because they didn't care previously, but this shift left approach that you are hearing also in the last couple of years has been evolving into say, okay, we need to embrace and increase even more the security team, validate the self-services, and keep iterating over and over to reduce or mitigate as much as possible and reduce the risk of security vulnerabilities at the end of the software supply chain. So if we see where we're coming from and where we're going, we have the Kanban system since the 40s. We are gonna go maybe 2000, I don't know, I will say 17, 16, when we added the sec to DevSecOps as an industry. And maybe now that the security team is not fighting anymore with operation and they're not having discussions with the development team why this CVE was catched by a user and not in the entire supply chain, maybe we should add also then the user, right? They could test better. They could help us to define better requirements that make allow our analysts to have better non-functional requirements gathering. So, I don't know what's going on next, but if I will guess, I will add, okay, well, we have DevOps, we have security, we have operation. Let's bring the users into the equation and let's increase in the collaboration amounts. And it's not because it haven't happened. It's just because there is a necessity to reinforce and make sure everyone is on the same page. Okay. I don't know if at this point we have a question, Mala, so far on the stream. If not, I continue.
Hi, Cesar. No questions as of now, so okay. I'll let you move on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have here this CVE more and more in the past months. Log4Shell and you name it, Equifax, SolarWind, and so on and so forth. But let's step back a little bit, and I'm gonna give you a real world example about what it takes from the open source point of view, how to actually, we as open source maintainers, as users, how all this is actually happening under the hood, because what you see is the headlines on the news. As a CTO, what you see is the headlines that some software was compromised or some government was compromised, and then you start to ask to your peers, you go with your operations engineers and say, okay, are we affected, are we not affected? So I added the word dilemma here because of the following you're gonna see. So the default open source detection, publication, and how again, the mission of the CVE program is to identify, define, and catalog publicly disclosure cybersecurity vulnerabilities. It has a standard workflow, I would call it, but sometimes that doesn't mean that there are not going to be challenges to navigate. So either a security researcher or an open source project manager or maintainer, I will call it, identify cybersecurity vulnerability, and they get in touch with either the security advisors in the open source project and say, okay, we found this issue, and there is a tracking system. It depends of which open source software you are contacting. They're going to have different ways to track these security issues, and at the same time, that is the time when the CVE number is generated. There is a period grace while the vulnerability was identified. In the meantime, or in parallel, the contributors or the open source maintainers are working along with the person who identified the issue to understand the severity and so on. And then finally, the CVE is released, and the information and all the prerequisites for that CVE are published. In the best case scenario, there is also the fix. There are scenarios when I bet you have been frustrated when you find a new CVE that if you have already in a mature stage of continuous integration and delivery, the automation won't let you move forward because there was a CVE related to the package or the service that you were just about to release. And then you, as independently of your role, I won't say developer operations or security, independently of your role, when you go and try to check the information, it turned out that there is no patch for that, right? You all have been in that situation. We all have been in that situation. So once that is published, we need to try to understand what's going under the hood of all this process and what's going under the hood until the moment that you say, okay, there is the new release, finally. These guys wake up, this guy didn't went to hiking this weekend, they finally commit the fix, make the release, and now I can move on with my pipelines and import my updates and move forward. And even if you check the information from even the MITRE organization, it just slightly changed. It gives you a little bit more of the workflow about the discover, report, request, how the ID is reserved, how you submit. But, these CVEs are not written in stone. They can evolve and change. And that's what I'm going to show you next. And who found the software vulnerabilities is another question that I get, right? Are there only security researchers? The answer is no. We also have open source contributors. There are automation and tooling that is running across many open source projects in the Java ecosystem daily that actually are triggering, are trying to find new bugs, new security vulnerabilities. Just to give you an example here, at least security vendors and so on and so forth. And the main question is, are we impacted or not? When you heard, I bet, the Log4j dilemma back in last year, one of the things is, am I impacted? And different, the response from the Java community around the world was, and many open source projects and also organizations and companies, they release blog posts, we release articles, tooling for actually help you to identify, right? And the thing is that we discovered that many stakeholders in the industry, they were not used to this workflow. And obviously the response time, if you don't have a mature DevOps, or if you want to call it DevSecOps, is fine, approach, is going to be harder and it's going to be more painful trying to catch up with this once you are actually trying to see if in production you are impacted or not, right? So there is a lot of things that need to be done, apart from the analysis, preconditions. If the patch is available, remember I said that I bet that you had been in a situation where the patch is not available and the CVE was already disclosed. And you have a couple of options, like we all have updating the source files and release constant version, because maybe the patch is already committed in the code, but the release hasn't been completed yet. So maybe you just need to download the source code that is already patched, or you need to do some backports and then do an internal release in your organization or in your open source project, because this happened also to us as open source maintainers. Another thing that happened, and this happened just recently, it was that the patch, the release was not yet available for one particular open source project, but the reporter and the maintainer of that project, they provided a configuration alternative to prevent you from being exposed. And last but not least, you also have the alternative to find an alternative component, but this requires tests, obviously. This common platform enumeration CPE is what it helps the tools that automate the CVEs scanning within your applications to see if you are impacted or not. This from an static code analysis point of view, right? And last but not least, the CVE errata, as I call it, CVEs also are evolving from the point that they were created. And recently, we also have a database or for the CVEs that are being actively exposed. So the CISA, known exploit vulnerabilities, or key IB, as you call the acronym, strongly recommends to all organizations to review and monitor these catalogs and allow you to prioritize the remediation of the listed vulnerabilities to reduce the likelihood of compromise by known threats in this catalog. So let me know if your security team, if you are still working in a little bit of silos and you as a developer just receive report from the security team and you need to fix them before the next release. Or either if you, while you are writing your code in IntelliJ and you have maybe the sync plugin or many others just giving you information that the update of the library that you are just about to add in your POM file or Gradle file, it's identified with a high CVE. So at that point, you have maybe 100 reports of a code that you now need to maintain, or your development, you are in development. So it's worth to take a look at this catalog, because this will help you, and this is one of the takeaways from this part, this can help you to make decisions or provide you input data to make better decisions, what to remedy from the gazillions and hundreds of CVEs that maybe and hopefully not your software has at that point. Another common question is, how can I contribute to the Java ecosystem when we are talking about CVE-related process, right? And for that, we need to talk in one slide about the open source governance, right? To have this conception about who is in charge of the open source project, why they haven't released this, who is the one that I need to call for them to release the code, right? And I've been a little sarcastic here, and you're going to see why. But the clear answer here is that you as a user, you as a CTO, that you know that 90% of your solutions and the value that you deliver to your customer are based on open source. So you are in charge in the sense that you can contribute, and the open source project will be happy to receive a couple of hours from your engineers to help to fix a patch or to help to deliver something that can prevent, or in the worst case scenario, mitigate vulnerability. And the question is, okay, Cesar, who can contribute? Who makes the decision? And there is also the misconception that only those that spend developing 20 hours per day drinking just soda and eating pizza are the ones who can actually make something on that project. And the answer is that in a healthy open source ecosystem and project, the community is the one who can take the decisions and who can contribute. And we as open source maintainers are always more than eager to bring new people into the projects. And when I say new people, it could be users again, it could be the contributors, or it could be committers, right? Some examples of how in Java open source security process are defined. You can, for many projects that you may be using from the Apache or Foundation, you can go, the same goes for Eclipse, for example, for Microprofile, Jakarta EE projects, and so on. And also the Adoptium for Temurin builds has the security policy available for you to double check and see how you can, if you are seeing an issue or you're seeing a potential CVE or you're trying to mitigate a CVE that hasn't been patched yet, that is a good starting point. There are many others projects, but just with Apache Foundation and Eclipse, I think Eclipse Foundation, I think you have plenty of projects there that under the umbrella of these foundations, they provide you a workflow so you can contribute. Let's jump into our first real-world example about what actually means to be an open source maintainer. And for that, I'm gonna speak about what I do in the open source, right? What better way to see if I'm doing right my job or not of being a good open source citizen that show you what I normally do with projects, some of the projects that I involve. So I am a committer, part of the PNC of Apache Tommy project. For all of those that is the first time that are hearing this, basically is Apache Tomcat plus the enterprise side of Java, which make this project Jakarta EE 9.1 certified. We are working towards Jakarta EE 10. And it basically is pronounced Tommy, and is an application server that has around more than 1 million lines of code. But that, allow us to really appreciate every contribution, because with a big code base, every contribution counts, and it could be a comma in the README file, it could be a new feature, it could be a bug. So it's really fun to see new people trying to help an open source project. Why I choose to put the flavors that we have in open source in Apache Tommy is because having to handle 4 different flavors or subdivision of Tommy for different purposes like microfile, Jakarta E, and so on, also has the challenge to have more than one branch to maintain, right? And that is when when we as contributors are trying to backport features, backport bug fixes, CVS fixes, there is a technical challenge, right? And this for me specifically is my perfect day-to-day work tool when I am in the IDE trying to backport and convert among the different branches. And among that, more than 1 million lines of code. So I'm gonna go to the next slide to show you a brief video here about what that actually means. Oops, sorry, I hit the wrong button here. Sorry. Let me go here. Okay. Yeah, I get too excited to show you the GIF. So in the best case scenario, when you want to backport something, it's just a matter of going into your IDE, in this case IntelliJ, and cherry pick, and voila, everything runs. It was a breeze to make this backport, and everything it's fine, right? Between the all 4 flavors, with the 3 or more branches. Having tools that help you, in this case, IntelliJ is really awesome in how you can have in the Git windows everything together and try to see what was the contribution and how you move forward with it. But there are times when the issue is actually that there are conflicts, right? And solving this, I have been trying, and this is my favorite part of this journey, that it minimized the time I need to invest in trying to scratch my head and try to compare about what I have on my local changes. Let me, it's too small, the font. What I have in my local changes, what I am cherry picking, and what I'm actually getting in my code base that I'm just about to push. So this is something that I hopefully you are enjoying to see. Is part of what I do in the open source, what I do also at my job. And I wanted to show you, this is involved. This is, if someone says, oh, I don't like that. Well, every time there is a CVE going on the open source in the Java ecosystem, people is doing this for you, right? So I think it's important, and we really appreciate the help from the ecosystem when we have to overcome these issues. Obviously, there is still a way to double check that everything is as expected before doing this big patch and roll out the releases and so on and so forth. A second example that I bring you is related with one of the comments that I made about how we can be actively involved in the open source. And again, I need to, what better that show you what I did. And if I did something wrong, let me know in the comments and I can improve myself too. But let's see this, right? This particular open source project received a comment, and this, and FYI, this is just for visibility purposes about what's going on between the fact that you identify a CVE and until you have the patch, right? The community here, this person is saying, is there a way, to stop having vulnerabilities? How can I help, right? And the response from one of the community members is that There is no large dev team behind that open source project, particular open source project, and it's a very popular project. That means there is an opportunity there for contribute, right? And the takeaway from here is there are projects, and Log4Shell was I think it was a daily bread for those who are open source maintainers to receive a CVE. I know it was an RCE, remote code execution, but we are used to see this under the hood of the open source. And the purpose of this session is to open a bit the what's going on when we are dealing with CVEs, right? So when I saw this, I identified that, for example, for this project, they are they have 4 branches. And the patch for that particular CV that we're going to see in the next slide, the CV number, was just at that point the maintainer had only committed into master branch or 2.14 branch. But the other 2 branches, people were asking, open GitHub issues, typing on the GitHub conversations, when this patch is going to be available, when it's going to be available, and just saw the previous slide, right? The project doesn't have too much resources. The help is needed there. So instead of me asking when this is going to be and cross my arms and wait for the release of the patching version of that, I went ahead as I guess good open source citizen, I will call it, and I just backported that, and obviously that had a process with the tooling I just showed you, right? Using GitHub, IntelliJ, seeing what version of Java you need to use. I use SDKman for managing the different versions, because that's something that you need to handle on the open source, right? If you need to use Java 8, Java 11, Java 17, you name it, right? So I backported, right? And the takeaway here is, let's focus on this. This backport allowed to have this 2.12.7.1 release available. And after I did that, I say, okay, I need to do the backport. I did it. I contribute. I made a mistake. I learned something new, right? I have more than 12 years doing this, and one of the maintainers from that project correct me to say, okay, we in this project, we do this way. And I say, okay, he did it in a very nice way in my pull request. I update my pull request. I send the changes. Let's call it a day, right? We contribute to open source. And that's it. The CVEs was backported. There is no more vulnerability in the software of your organization, my company, our open source projects. Let's call it a day. But this screenshot that you're going to see here were I took them yesterday, right? Still, and again, I am not pointing at Sneak. I'm not pointing. I'm gonna give you the why this is happening for you to understand what it's involved in this entire process of security in the Java ecosystem, right? And not only in the Java ecosystem, it actually applies to many languages and platforms. So remember, the release that we did, or actually the release that I contributed during the backport, but the maintainers finally did the release, was 2.12.7.1. Okay, but this CVE still is marked to be fixed in 2.13.4 or higher. And that means that for this report, if you use this tool, and I'm not saying I have nothing against this tool, and don't worry, I have all the tools, almost all the tools in the next slides, basically are telling you need to migrate to this version, because there is no other way. If you have 2.12.0, you are affected, and you don't have any other way to go than this release, right? So, okay, let's go to Sonatype. It's gonna be fine, okay? Let's see. It says this version, remember the one that we released, is still affected by this CV, and it's a high CV. Okay, but why that is happening? The CV score is 7.5, severity high, okay? So all these screenshots are from yesterday. You have seen the NBN repository website, and again, this one is directly with that version. It recognized that there is a release already to 2.12.7.1, but it still show the vulnerability in that release and why that is happening. Why? Let's continue. Last but not least, the GitHub advisors is still, it says, is patched only on 2.13.4. So there, I know the reason, and I'm going to share it with you. But before I doing the exercise, let's go to see what's going on. Why even the patch was created by in the master branch by the maintainers more than 15 days ago, and I backported that more than 20 days ago. Why there isn't being updated? And 8 days ago, Chad, one of the contributors of this project, they contacted NVD, the National Vulnerability Database, and say, okay, we release it. I'm sorry, I jump ahead too quickly. We released this, and the difference between, by the time he contacted NVD was just 1 day, and the CVE was updated. Okay, so this happened 7 days ago, but yesterday, all the tools are still reporting that. Why that is happening? Okay. Okay, so I went to the NVD database, and when I saw the title, the description is still saying only it's only been patched in 2.13.4. That triggered more question, right? But remember, I mentioned something interesting a couple of slides ago. There is the CPE. The CPE was updated. Indeed, and it was updated, let me see here. It was updated a couple days ago. And in that update, they fix, or they update, I will say, the CPE. And in the CPE it says, okay, this is affected up to 2.12.7.1, excluding that one, excluding 2.12.7.1, and then from 2.13 to 2.13.4, excluding that particular. So the tools that you're using, the scanners that you're using, are depending on this information. So why they are still saying that this artifact, this jar, is still not available for this? Well, because that tool hasn't gone to this catalog and update that reference. And that is common bread in the open source side of the fence when we are talking about CVEs, right? I hope that this brief second real-world scenario give you a little bit of more insight about what's going on with the vulnerabilities while they are actually announced, until the point that you are finally sleeping already without any nightmares that your industry or your customer data has been compromised. And all this, the why of all this second scenario is the common platform enumeration hasn't been read by all these automation tools. That's why they are still marking this as an issue. This drives us to the next topic. Before that, I don't know, Mala, if we have at this point a question.
Cesar, we have a lot of questions, so if you're
okay. Okay.
We have amazing questions by Nikita. Let me ask the first one. So it's about how, let me show the question so that you can see that on your screen. So how do we manage one, that's a tongue twister for me.
How we manage vulnerabilities.
Yes, in the existing.
So how to manage the vulnerabilities in the existing. Okay. You know what? Hopefully the find the vulnerability during the build is hard enough.
So he has a lot of kind of additional content to the questions. So if that makes sense.
Bring them. Okay.
Yes. And so that's another one, like SonarQube and Nexus IQ actually doing what they should. And of course, so I asked him if he's talking only about the development, then he said, no, it's about some transient OSS dependency, then which we get to know after we kind of deploy the project. And we have these old projects, so which we run, but they are not being actively developed. So I'll stop at this and probably take the remaining questions later.
Yeah. So this is a great question, and thank you, Nikita. I cannot read here from my. I don't have wear my glasses now. I only see the slides. But thank you much for the great question. And the second scenario I just showed you is transit dependency that you mentioned, right? Our Sonar Q and Nexus, I think was the second. Doing the right
Yes.
thing. I think yes, they are doing the right thing. The second scenario I just show is not to say they are doing something wrong. No, there is a gap of some automation that needs to be shortened. So maybe they have outdated information, right? And this is an evolving, and we are part of the problem and the solution, right? And why we are part of the problem? Okay, we have, as you mentioned, I'm talking in first person because I want to wear your T-shirt and say, okay, we have plenty of old projects that no longer are maintained, right? So remember, if they are not they are not path to have new resources, we have these three recommendations. You can update the source file. You can try to drive to that abandoned project, I will call it, of that project that is no longer maintained, and maybe you can create a fork and start driving attention for more contributions to jump in, right? This has a challenge that we are going to see in the next slides about the software supply chain and how there has been some malware being inserted by actually this process of, hey, I want to contribute, nobody else is taking care of this project, and in that process, while the community is starting to adapt to how to work with that, there are some contributions that are malintended and then actually leak malware into that, and I'm going to that later. You can try to see how you can reconfigure your software, or this is the painful answer, maybe you need to find for alternative components. And I know you will need to go to your CTO and say, we cannot update, we cannot keep developing new features based on this. We need to invest a little bit of time to try any of what I just mentioned, right? And that is going to require resources, time, and so on and so forth. But that's what I'm saying when we are part of the problem, right? But we are also have the opportunity to be part of the solution, as I just showed you. So thank you for the great question.
And I would just like to add one point to your amazing answer. Is like, Nikita, if you have, I don't know if you have tried out using a latest version of IntelliJ IDEA, we have a lot of new features which takes care of your transitive dependency. Let's say if you have a Maven project. So if there is a transitive dependency, that dependency would be highlighted using a yellow background. And if you use the recommendation by the IDE, that would let you know which version you should upgrade to. So I think that's an amazing feature for taking care of the issues during the development phase. Because as Nikita said, I'm just frightened a lot because 90% of the code in the projects is OSS. So yes, that really makes sense.
Yes, yeah. As you say, Mala, open source ate the world many years ago. So,
Yeah.
so we are in that situation. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So I'll drop off and I'll let you move forward with your presentation.
Sure. Thank you. Keep coming the questions. I love the question. That's the value of being in the live streaming, right? Software dependency management. Okay. And again, I always try to put what we hear, what we go to sessions and learn, and we all get out of the session really motivated. Oh, I need to improve my software dependencies up to date. Because they minimize technical dev, I'm going to go as an architect and talk to my developers and say, we increase our supply chain security, we keep our dependencies up to date. And this ensures, software sustainability in the long term. But then we have, if it's broken, please don't try to fix it. If it's not broken, don't try to fix it. It's just an internet software. Don't worry. IntelliJ market everything as yellow, red, and all the plugins, but it's an internet software. Nothing is going to happen. We know how that ended up, right? Okay, who will do it? I understand that you are coming. I am the CTO. I understand I am the Chief Operation Officer, and I understand that we need to address that. Who will do it, and who will monitor it? From the user's point of view, they're going to receive a note saying, okay, we are going to delay your new features because we need to patch CVEs. And what is that? explain me what a CVE is, the user going to tell you. And in the worst case scenario, right? And you need to go and explain, and maybe you can send them the link to this session too, right? We don't have enough test. The QA team is going to say, you're going to change more than 90% of the dependencies, but we don't have enough test. And right now we can afford to do more testing, right? And this is the dilemma, right? This is the dilemma. The bots armada to the rescue. This is the GitHub ones. As Mala mentioned, IntelliJ has an entire catalog of many of these same plugins to be available while you are actually writing the code. But why I started with the bots armada? Because there is also a dilemma there. Let's go on. So there was a study performed to analyze how these bots are contributing and what are the features that are needed. And this was also published, this exploratory study. The links are there in the slides, but it took more than almost 2,000 projects from the most popular ones from GitHub, including Java among them, Java projects. And this study was focused on Dependabot, right? They come up with some interesting findings that I'm going to share today to not take too much time. So the first part of the slide show you the top bots that are the top Dependabot, and all the ones that are being right now the top bots that are right now in popularity, right? This was released just a couple months ago. Maybe you are using one of those. Maybe you are starting to use one of those. So maybe this will be, I'm sure, interesting for you. But on the right side is the top reasons for why people stop using Dependabot. So one of the things is notification fatigue, lack of group update support, package manager incompatibility, lack of configuration, and so on and so forth. So there is still challenge in that area. That means there is opportunity to improvement. Let's go to the next one, because I didn't know we are running out of time. And they identify some features that the developers want for these automations, right? Group updates by PR, maybe package manager support, or improve that, allow the auto merge. This is an interesting one. And display release notes, how to avoid unnecessary updates. But with the example that I just showed you on the open source, there must be some artificial intelligence system that do all that I just described you, right? In order to have many of these features. So there is a lot of challenge there. And last but not least, the study showed that more than 11% of the projects deprecated the use of Dependabot after all those reasons that we just saw. For Java tooling, and again, these are just a glance of many others that are available. I'm not talking in this session about continuous integration and continuous delivery to talk about many static code analysis tooling. I have a couple of recommendations later on that mention some of that software, but for continuous integration, you can find an entire universe of automation tools. But in terms of how to check dependencies, well, you have the OWASP dependency check, JFrog X-Ray, Nexus Lifecycle, Sneak open source software composition analysis, just to name a few related to Java tooling. The security in the supply chain is composed by all these stakeholders that you are seeing here. So that means that for each area, you will end up having some kind of tooling that you can apply. I'm going to skip a little bit the wake-up call of the SolarWinds. If you are not familiar with, you can go, and there are plenty of articles. I really like this one because it gives you all what happened. But I'm going to summarize the issue with what happened. What is the risk that the software supply chain have, as the question was made by one of the audience, when you are using third-party repositories? But in this case, the private repository was the one that got into the SolarWinds event, right? So the SolarWinds event, the repository that was compromised was a private repository, and from there, it reached the container registry that the users ended up applying. The other scenario is when the public repository has some compromised pull request being merged, and that is part of a transitive dependency. So all these affects and attacks the software supply chain. This is the takeaway from the software supply chain. Tooling, more Java tooling for static code analysis, container imaging scanning, which is also part of we as Java developer phase since a couple of years ago. Dynamic application security testing. This is not just a static code analysis, but it's actually dynamic application, as the name implies. And continuous delivery security that you can find online. Just a couple of days ago, GitHub released fine-grained personal access tokens. This is actually also allow us to delegate more roles within an open source project, and also implement policies to minimize the risk of contributions that may be trying to put malware in the source code of Java dependencies. We only have 5 minutes. Let me know, Mala, if I continue or we just covered this last part of the session. I don't know how many questions are at this point.
We have a few questions, but I'll let you finish your presentation, and then probably we can take all the questions towards the end.
Okay, thank you much. So, there has been, since the Equifax, SolarWinds, and so on and so forth, the governments, industry, academics, open source, there has been the need to improve how we can improve our security in the software supply chain. So this is a glimpse to the SBOM software bill of materials. Basically, you can think as an SBOM is the complete formally structured list of components, libraries, modules that are required to build, compile, and link a given piece of software in the supply chain relationship between all of them, right? So I have a couple of examples. What is this concept of SBOM? For all of those that are in the Maven ecosystem, you may be saying, we have been using this since decades. No, it's slightly different. And all these original with the National Institute for the Standard and Technologies were asked by US executive order to improve the cybersecurity, right? So within those 60 days, they need to publish the minimum requirements to define what an SBOM will actually contain. And the interesting part here is that NTIA minimum elements were published later that same year in 2021. And the minimum elements consist of 3 broad categories: data fields, which is the baseline of information about each software component; automation support, which is the ability to generate SBOMs in machine and human readable formats; and practices and processes, and how when organizations should generate the SBOMs. So again, SBOM is like the recipe of your favorite meal. In this case, the SBOM in technology, in Java project, is all the recipe for making your business solution. So that includes not only Java, that will include your database, the operating system you're using. It can include even the hardware that is running under that, versions, licenses, and from that, you have the main instructors to say, okay, let's now see it with the DevSecOps team, or whatever you want to call it in your organization, and let's analyze and apply priorities to see what we can remediate, right? The SBOM tool classification taxonomy is just how you are going to produce, consume, and transform. We have nowadays the SPDX, the Software Package Data Exchange, is recognized as the international open standard for security license compliance and software supply chain artifact. This is under the Linux Foundation, but in parallel, you have the tooling, right? The tooling for Java, how to generate this recipe from out of your projects, but also the Open Web Application Security Project, commonly known as OWASP, also create Cyclone DX. And this has been created as a reference implementation of the APIs in this BOM repository server. The question is, okay, we now have 2 options to represent these recipes. The SBOMs, we have the SPDX, and we have the Cyclone DX. And we can think that the SPDX is a standard format for sharing information about software packages, while Cyclone DX is a specification for creating the software bill of material, the SBOMs. I put here a couple of examples of what is the entire ecosystem behind Cyclone DX. Is a lot of information. Just one session for Cyclone DX is an entire 15 minutes. But in terms of Java, we have tools for Cyclone for Maven, for the core Java library, for Gradle, and App Sonar. It has the plugin. And I bet in the industry right now, there have been delivering other ways so you can generate your SBOMs files out of your Java related projects. And what is this SBOM at the end of the day? Is what we are seeing here, right? And it could be XML, it could be JSON format. It's up to you. But basically here it generates the recipe for this application. Oops, sorry. It generates the recipe for this application that you can see. It has a name, a version. It has, for example, the content type that this application is using, and also the libraries that are related with version of Tomcat. This entire recipe of software, as I will call the SBOM, another way to call it, is being used. It can be used also for signing components. So you can sign the version of, in this example, of Tomcat you are using. And why that is important is that, well, let's go to the SolarWinds issue, right? To know that the artifacts that you're receiving are not compromised from your internal repository or registry in this case. There is also, and with that I'm finishing the session. There is also this interesting project dependency track, also from OWASP, which basically is like it has a REST API, and it has the graphic interface in which you can use to upload your SBOMs, your recipe of your software supply chain solution, to actually analyze and see the trends, and they also correlate. For example, I have this amount of CVs between MySQL or MariaDB, whatever you use, the version of Java, the version of the framework you're using, the library components, the operating system, and they make a triad, and they make a triad, and they show you which of those are more likely to be exploitable. So it's a really interesting project. Again, an entire presentation just for the dependency track, but I think is it really worth to mention. The challenges to overcome, based on the last 2 years of being focused on the security side of the fence, not from the Java programmatically point of view, but from the ecosystem and how we can improve our software supply chain, is unit test, right? Unit test. And also you need to be aware that we are in an ecosystem in which you can use open source, but you can also contribute to. And we all get involved, right? From either your favorite Apache project, if you are Jakarta user, Microflow user, or you're interested in the OWASP project, how you can get involved and say hi to those communities. I led you with a couple of recommended readings about all the topics or different topics that I have been covering during this session. And again, I know it's a lot of content, a lot of maybe new terms that you have been hearing, but the industry is moving forward, and we in the open source are really eager to welcome new contributors, new users, so on, to improve and make our life easier with automation, tooling, and proper response to security vulnerabilities. Thank you so much for staying with me. Again, thank you, Mala, for the invite, and all the team at JetBrains. And I will let you now to jump into the QA section if we still have time for it.
Yes, I'll take a few quick questions. So first of all, it was an amazing presentation. I'll have to probably re-watch the session a couple of times to kind of let that sink in, because there was so much to learn, so much of things that I have not known about that earlier. So thank you again, Cesar. That was really amazing. So the other question is again from Nikita, but he is asking this question on behalf of his friend. So if that makes sense to you, ORSC test and SAST tools, because I have not used them before.
Yes, there is a plethora of tooling at this point for static analysis and dynamic analysis. In the slides, maybe that came before I showed the slide where the tooling was shown. I mentioned, if we go in the history, we start with individual components that maybe your Maybe or Gradle project already has, like Findbox, PMD, and so on and so forth. But all that evolved then into SonarQube, like an umbrella for static code analysis. So I remember you mentioned already that you're using that. So and I know it's overwhelming to come into an agreement with the rest of the teams in the organization to say, okay, this is marking everything red. What we should really focus on. The SBOM approach is a wider approach because it not only focuses on the Java part, it also takes care of all the other stakeholders like your databases, load balancer, reverse proxy you're using, operating system. And after you have all the SBOM, all the recipe of your solution, then you can start to prioritize. From my point of view, you can do better prioritizing and decide what to apply and what not to apply. In the IDE, you can install the plugins for a static code analysis tool. Of course, you can do that. You can also, and that is good because you do it. You can prevent while you're writing new code. You can prevent to apply those policies, but the policy needs to be created, right? So this is a work that needs to be done first.
Makes sense. So there's another question again by Nikita, and he is kind of looking at some comparison or your insight on this topic.
Okay, there is a perception versus reality, a data-driven look, and open source risk management. Yes, again, it will depend who you ask that question, right? Because it's not because we are working in silos. That's why I started my session with the Agile and then to DevOps approach. But in real life, many organizations still they're trying to adapt the best of DevOps, of DevSecOps. Still, there are hierarchies sometimes in which when you talk with the team that is in charge of the security, they are concerned about open source risk management, right? If you talk with the team that is dedicated to data science, data mining, they are concerned about the data-driven approach. So there is no black and white. There are many in between topics that we need to sit on a table together and have a conversation about what are your concerns and how we can help each other to lower those concerns into actual actions that we both as teams, DevSec, security, operations, development, we all come into agreement and bring value at the end to the software supply chain, right? Because we want to create feature for our customers. We don't want to be patching CVEs all the time.
That's really interesting, Cesar. And what I really like about the whole ecosystem is that we're not only talking about looking at how to secure our open source code. We can also look at kind of patching the already existing issues. So we are kind of working together so we can also kind of create the path that we want to walk on. Just not let just ask for something to be created. We can collaborate and we can actually contribute. So that's an amazing and a beautiful thing, I would say.
Yes.
And another comment by Nikita, that was a lot of stuff to process. And
I know, and apologize. I could just go with the software supply chain and start from there. But it is different when you are on a face-to-face event and you say, "How many have heard about DevOps?" And if all the people raise their hand, I just skip the first 10 slides. But it's hard to be in on an online event. But hopefully, it was useful for you too.
No, I think Nikita meant that in a positive way that I did, because there were so many topics that I was not aware about. So it's good to know. And as you said, it's kind of difficult to gauge where the audience is. So, and of course, it was a big topic, and you did an amazing job in having to kind of bring on all the topics in our session. That is, I know as a presenter, it takes a lot of time to kind of chop things off. So that was amazing. So there's another thank you message. Awesome presentation.
Thank you.
So, yes. So we're saying better a lot of stuff to process than a train crashing because
Yeah.
of the issues.
Yeah. Yeah, it's better it's better to from the 10 topics at least remember one and then go and investigate that. But
Right.
yeah.
So, yes, we all loved learning from you. And yes, that was a super amazing session, Cesar, I would say. Thank you so much for
Thank you
your
so
time
much.
today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mala, again, and hope to see
Mm.
you all either online or virtually. And thank you again. Thank you much.
Yes, and before we sign off, I want to thank everyone who was watching the session, asking questions. I hope you managed to learn a few things. And if you rewatch, I'm sure you will be able to kind of pick up a lot of things. And if you want to know more about IntelliJ Idea or our live streams, you can follow all these links. And don't miss to follow Caesar. And this is, you can see the handle, his Twitter handle here, and also a link to his GitHub repository. If you want, you can connect with him and ask questions, collaborate. He is a super amazing person, and I'm sure you both will have a good time collaborating on good projects. And if you are, yes, and everyone, thanks for joining in. Again, if you like the content, do not miss to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Thank you so much. And before we sign off, Caesar, if you have any closing comments, that would be great.
Yeah, I would like to first thank everyone who reached until this point of the presentation. Thank you, Mala, and all the team behind IntelliJ IDEA and the JetBrain teams. It was really an honor for me to be here, and also with Mala as the host. I feel really amazing giving this presentation today. And keep watching the content. Really good content there related with security too. Some sessions have been code driven demos, so stay tuned for more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if anyone watching, if you're interested in another session on refactoring, we are hosting a session on refactoring next month, Thursday, 24th of November. So stay tuned. And until then, bye.